Hey, y'all, welcome to Challenge Accepted. I am Frank, and I'm here with Thomas.
Hello, everybody.
And today we're talking about The Boys, Episode 4.
Wisdom of the Ages.
Wisdom of the Ages, thank you. This show is so nice to have around. It is just a fun, poppy show. I'm giving this thing already, just so you guys know, I'm giving this like a 4.5 out of 5. That's where I'm at on this episode, and it just keeps hitting it out of the park. It's really nice to have one of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny to say like, oh, it's just so nice to have this show when it's like so bloody and gory and like kind of very brutal on the social commentary in some ways. But you are right, though. It is still comforting in a sense. You're like, oh, the boys being the boys. It's just, you know, do your thing.
And meanwhile, I mean, we'll get into the breakdown here in a second, but to just step ahead of it, it's probably Antony Starr's best performance I've ever seen out of him is in this episode.
Yeah, for one whole episode, definitely. He just crushes it all around in this one. You know, there's individual parts throughout the seasons where if you put it in one episode, it'd be like, oh my God. But just through one episode, the range of emotions and like him dealing with his trauma, but also thinking he's better than humans is, man, masterclass. He should definitely get an Emmy nom, right?
If the Emmys are not bullshit, Antony Starr gets nominated and honestly should win this thing.
Yeah. I want to see what happens in House of the Dragon, what happens in The Bear, but like for sure nominated. Sure nominated. Yeah.
I feel like there's a bias though, like, oh, superhero stuff doesn't get nominations, and that's a shame.
Yeah, that's true. Yep, you're very right.
Let's do our rundown. You ready to go over there?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, and go.
All right, so it starts with Homelander visiting his home where he was kind of born in the lab. We also see that Butcher has a parasite inside of his back. He gets knocked out. Now, President Singer is like looking through the channels, and Annie shows up and says, hey, you know, I know you have this bill going on. I'm going to help you. And basically, he kind of aligns himself with her, which we see later on is probably not the best move. Now, we see that Frenchie is also told by Colin about his family and how they were murdered. Frenchie obviously feels guilty about this. Then Homelander just starts messing with people in the lab. And yeah, it's kind of brutal, but he's also putting them through some of the things that he went through, but it's a pretty nuts part of the episode. We also see that Firecracker is doing a performance, and it's right across the street from the Starlight headquarters, and it's just a complete slap in the face to Annie and that whole organization. Now, Homelander, again, kind of recounts some of his story with Marty. And Marty does not have a good time. He's going to be missing something by the end of a lot of things, his whole life, actually. Hughie and Kimiko meet up with A-Train. That then turns into them being attacked by the Shining Light Liberation, I think they're called. And Kimiko has to deal with somebody from her past. Hughie straight up just murders somebody. And he has to decide by the end of it if he's going to give his dad the V to save his life. He doesn't, but it kind of ends on this weird cliffhanger in a sense that you see the blue fluid or the compound V go into his dad's veins, and then he wakes up, but Huey didn't give it to him. Homelander deals with more, and at the end we see why it's called the bad room for Homelander, and everybody from the lab is just dead. So it's pretty brutal, and that's kind of where the episode ends.
There we go. Pretty good. You got 4 seconds left. So let's break this down by stories, and let's go, honestly, kind of the more lighthearted ones. Kimiko and Hughie together, we don't see those two interact a lot, but it felt like a pretty cool outing for them, and I really liked how Kimiko's like, hey, you need to fight. Like, that whole, this is your shield now, this is a box cutter, goes here over their neck, and stuff. That was just a really good little tutorial, while Hughie's like, my leg's hurting, and all this stuff.
Yeah, but man, you're so right. I love this pair together, because you're right, we don't normally get them. But it was also very cool to see how far Hughie's come. Like, now he's just a killer. You know, he's not as skilled as a Butcher or Mother's Milk or Kimiko, but man, the guy could still hold his own. And damn, was it kind of brutal once all that blood splashed on his face. Oh, yeah. It's kind of like a weird juxtaposition to Homelander at the end of this episode.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I really appreciate the complexity between Kimiko's position and presumably her sister, or whatever that is. That person she brings in, it feels like a sister. Because it's this thing where, like, Kimiko we've seen as the victim for a very long time, but in this particular case, she's the one that brought her in. So Kimiko is seen as the bad guy in that relationship, and like it's like, hey, she's better now, but we can't justify that to her victim. Like it's a complicated situation, which this show does well.
Yeah, yeah, very true. You also made me think about the parallels to Firecracker and Starlight in this one. Like Starlight's been the victim a lot too, and she's kind of overcome, the sexual assault she had in season 1, and she's really grown. But you're right, in this season so far, we see that she was kind of a mean girl in these beauty pageants and all that stuff. So, and how Firecracker's taking it out on her. But yeah, it's done that. It's like turned all of these heroes or the sympathetic characters into people who are like, wow, you guys weren't perfect either.
Well, and you know what? And it turns the least sympathetic person into somebody you're like, man, they put him in that room and they burned him a bunch. And man, they put him in that room and laughed at him. And man, so even Homelander is shown as like, hey, I was a victim too. It's an interesting theme that I didn't realize beforehand was in this episode the entire time.
Yeah, totally. And it seems to make sense, right? Like hurt people is the same,
right? Of course.
But to see how brutal it was for Homelander growing up and being in like the oven or like a box and, just couldn't have a little peace, be like a true, kid going through puberty was just like, damn, that's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, Hughie, of course, dealing with the struggles with his dad himself and how does he handle that? The blue stuff that goes into the dad's vein. I presume that was the mom who pickpocketed Hughie and then knew what he was in there for and then injected the dad. What are your thoughts on that?
Interesting. Yeah. We know very little about the mom. And there was somebody online that was saying that one of the rumors was that she was kind of a vision like Butcher is having for his late wife. And so I keep thinking, is this going to be a Sixth Sense scenario where she's actually not there and Hughie's imagining it? Because she really hasn't directly spoken to anybody. And I keep looking out for it. And I'm like, I don't think she's spoken to anybody else but Hughie. So like, I'm like, I don't know if that theory is true, but it's kind of got me questioning things. So yeah, maybe it was her who pickpocketed and she is real this whole time. And that's just absolutely crazy. Or Hughie's doing things and not even realizing he's doing it because a side of his personality is like coming out as his mom.
I could see that. It could be an effect from taking the V earlier, which we learned that like, that's why Butch is going through things as he took V as well. That could be. I think it might be a little bit simpler. I think we're going to learn the mom's not innocent in anything, and that she has her own motives. And yeah, so I think it'll be that. But I like this puzzle box we're trying to solve here.
Yeah, cool. You're right. Like the fact that she kind of works for Vought already is like, what? That's a little suspicious. So you're right. Maybe she's a plant.
It could be a plant, could be somebody who like worked with Butcher in the past, something like that. Like she's also been shady and like trying to take Vought down from the inside or something like that. There could always be something. I think they're going to try to redeem her a little bit, but it'll still not be good enough for Jack Quaid. So I think that's kind of what you would do storytelling wise is the person he can't stand comes in and they bond over this awkward situation or bad situation. And then we'll find out what Simon Pegg's abilities are soon. Like he might have some dope, I have to look at the comics and see what it was in the comics like that everybody got, but yeah, that's pretty neat.
It is, and it's so good to have him back. It was like such a bummer seeing at the beginning of the season that he's in this coma and you're like, no, like he's so cool. He barely gets any screen time for a lot of these seasons. I feel like since season 1 we haven't really seen him a lot, and so him awake and maybe with powers, oh man, that's gonna be an exciting part of the later half of the season.
Yeah, it is. And then, again, during the part of getting the Compound V, we've realized that Butcher himself took it. And so Butcher has powers. We don't know what they are. But we've been seeing this worm, and it looks like the worm's actually bigger now when it was crawling around on his back. And then when Butcher was near death during a fight he was having, he blacked out or whatever, but the creature that was inside him presumably attacked and demolished the other guy in the room. I mean, made a mess of him. It was pretty rough. So I wonder what that power is, and does Butcher need to be knocked out for it to be effective, and does he have any control over it at all? It's going to be an interesting journey for Butcher himself.
Yeah, that's a cool thought you had where it's like he needs to be unconscious for this thing to be released. There's a character in Demon Slayer, and yeah, everybody's probably screaming right now. I can't think, but basically his powers only activate when he's asleep. So and he's like scared all the time. He's not a good fighter, but then when he's asleep, he's like a complete badass. So dude, that'd be cool. I'm all for that. There's also like this element of like almost like a werewolf, like where you're unconscious and then the demon comes out. But yeah, I don't know. I was thinking too with this parasite that's kind of climbing around inside of him. I'm like, maybe maybe it was like a tumor, and then the V gave life to the tumor and then turned him into venom or something. I don't know.
That would be cool. I could actually really see that, because but basically everything in The Boys is being pulled from mostly DC, but also Marvel. There's an analog for everybody. There's the Spider-Man character, all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, the idea that they're pulling a Venom out of this, and maybe even more so a Carnage, that would be awesome.
Yeah. That'd be cool. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, very brutal deaths in it. The way he used the nitro, what is it? Not nitroglycerin, but basically the hydrogen something to freeze that guy's arm, breaks it with a crowbar. A lot of crowbar kills, which I heard from the comics. That's what Butcher was his like main weapon.
Yeah.
So it's cool that they're bringing that in. But man, these new characters in the Seven are just so evil in completely different ways, but so good. With Firecracker doing the whole performance and song and dance, literally a song and dance outside of the Starlight thing, and really playing to how Starlight's evil, then pulling out medical records and private documents from her, and her and Hughie apparently were gonna have a baby. That was like a new piece of information. And then Sister Sage just kind of being the puppeteer from behind the scenes, like, oh man, this is trending. That's perfect. God, ooh, I love it. What do you think about those characters?
Well, not again, we're trying to be light-footed on the politics of it all, but the fact that like Firecracker's sitting there doing this big performance like she's in front of a huge crowd, and then we see the full shot that it's only the people that's paid behind her, that there's absolutely nobody in front of her. Is like, yeah, I've seen that before. And right. Everything she's doing is totally for poking at the bear, and even bringing on her preacher, Starlighter's young preacher and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Ezekiel guy. Yeah,
Ezekiel, he's such a turd. And then we got the information later on. But yeah, she's just being confrontational for confrontational's sake, and really has no like value as a person. And I love how you could tell, knows that in every way. Like anytime she's by herself or when she talks about, I give people purpose or whatever. It's like, yeah, you're hollow. You're just for yelling at Starlight, who is a real person really doing things. And we found out that she has a weakness. And it's sickening, the fact that the thing that would have normally doomed somebody in her circle to her sheep is not a problem at all. She admits it, gets forgiveness, and is fine. And it's just like, that's how corrupt and destructive that side of this argument is. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, and it is kind of amazing. You're like, how could she bounce back from that? And they really play up the conservative, middle America values and all that. And then you find out, that she was having relations with like an underage kid, basically.
15, I think it was. Yeah.
Right. You're like, how's she gonna get out of this one? And the fact she owns it, she's like, please just forgive me. You're like, this bitch really
I know
is just gonna manipulate us. Man.
And then we see that all the time nowadays too. And it's just like, it's terrible. But it's like, son of a gun, this show does a really good job of making disappointing, depressing things in our real life fun and entertaining on The Boys. I do enjoy that.
Yeah, like the satire. It reminds me of that episode in Gen V where Golden Boy dies and the girl goes up to basically where they're like, they have all the flowers and balloons and pictures of him and everything, and she turns on her Instagram and starts crying, and as soon as she turns it off, she like walks away, just completely fine. Yeah, it's like, man, that's such a good, just like satirizing things that probably really happen in real life or do really happen in real life. Oh man, The Boys so good with that.
It is. I just hate Firecracker so much, but that's the exact point. That's exactly right. Totally. But the other addition, again, I'm a big fan of, is Sage, and her relationship with the Deep. I like how the Deep is so needy, so awkward. He's like, hey, you're better than an octopus, and they have this romantic lobotomy scene, which was so damn brutal. It was hard to watch.
I'm not gonna lie. I skipped ahead like 10 seconds when things were still. Then I skipped it. Like things around the eye. Like even as a person who has worn contacts in the past, like any type of things poking the eye or about to stab the eye, I'm out. Like I can't do that. So, but you called it. I think we talked about it. What was it in our last episode? I was like, what do you think the poker's about? You called it. Crazy enough that it had to go in the eye this time. I don't know if that's better than up the nose or something like that. But you straight up called that scene. scene, and it was brutal that they actually gave it to us in live action. That was just wild.
Yeah, and it was so disturbing because not only is just lobotomies, which were very common back in the day, just terrible, but also like she was kind of getting off on the scraping around in her brain, and it was just like this show is so rough to watch. Like it's so The Boys.
yeah, it is. But man, what a cool character in like that's how she has to shut down, and that's how she can then relate to the deep. Like wild. We also there was a Ray J and Kim call out in there too, which I was like, oh my god, there's nothing's off limits.
The more I watch of her too, the more I presume she is taking down the boys or the Seven as well. I think she's trying to take down everything, the Seven, Vought, all of it, and society. I think she's just like, I want to be as destructive as possible. I am, a chaos, but in control of it. I think that's what she's doing. So I look forward to seeing what comes next. But she's the bad guy of the bad guys, I think.
Yeah. I like that theory because I honestly have no idea where they're going to go with her. The fact that the boys are just trying to get one piece of information up on her is like, dang, they're screwed between Homelander and her. But Homelander in this episode, like you said, this performance was outstanding from the beginning of like, hey, you just brought a cake. Hey, just catching up. Hey, remember that one time when you were a kid? And we get to see it with the first guy. I think his name is Frank. He's like, you taught me this game. And he crumples up the piece of paper, throws it in the trash can. And from that jump, you're like, they're all effed. This is not going to go well for the people in this lab.
As soon as the elevator's doors open, you're like, oh, everybody's dying. Gotcha. The fact that, again, I hate to keep singing the guy's same freaking song over and over again. Antony Starr, the fact that he's such a good actor and he could stand in the room and just with his facial expressions increase the tension as you're watching scenes by so much. It is outstanding. Man, like there's the kind of the guy who later on gets his junk shut off. He was trying to control the situation. Like he was the manager trying to be responsible and he kept messing up and saying John. Homelander didn't care for that. And it was like you could tell he was like trying to see if the old controls still worked. And then eventually when the project lead came in, she was able to actually use the controls quite well, really. They still didn't work, but you could tell like she was the one that was the closest to successfully shutting down Homelander. But eventually it just didn't work at all.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Dang, I mean, Marty should have never laughed that night. Frank should have never pushed the button on the oven. Like, it was bad. And you're so right. Just with Antony Starr being in the room by himself and just doing these monologues and kind of reminiscing on what Homelander's past would be like and seeing the little twitches in his face, where he remembers these things is so good. But I also got to say, they do a good job of having these kind of background actors and the extras really show fear because it progressively gets scarier and scarier for them, right? At first it's like, wait, just another day on the job. And it's like, you're making Frank do what? And then you're making Marty do what? And the way they're disgusted with what Marty has to do. It felt very much like Black Mirror for me.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, it was that first episode of Black Mirror ever where, the prime minister has to do that thing with the pig. Oh my God. It felt like that.
But there's something with him with Homelander in general where he's like along with a joke, and even when he's just on along with a joke, everybody's already tense. They know that it just takes anything for him to kill everybody in the room without a hesitation. But he's laughing along. Hey, let's toss buzz it. And then he's like talking. And again, it's just the character and the actor, the way they can go from like humor to like, oh, this chick made the turn, And with Frank, for example, he didn't even say he pushed the button. The guys that he said there was two guys watching me from the thing. Like they were the one doing the experiment on him, but Frank was sitting there not caring about a kid burning. And that showed how much he was just like, oh, it was just my job. That's the excuse you never use, man. It was something else. And we talked about victimhood beforehand. They made Homelander feel like the victim in this one. And I wonder, the reason he went there is because I believe it was Sage that said, you have to go back to the source or whatever. Maybe it was actually, no, it was his reflection that said that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wonder how much this will change Homelander going forward. Will he have doubts anymore? Will he worry about aging as much because he got rid of this baggage,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, all of the things, I mean, I think that's the whole point of the conversation with Barbara in the bad room is that, it's like one thing you could never escape from us, even though you could have broken out anytime, is your humanity.
Yeah.
And he's basically cut ties with all of his humanity now. Like everybody
Mm-hmm.
that saw him grow up, were almost pseudo father figures in a sense because he never really had one. Like he killed them all. And then he
Yeah.
locked Barbara in that room. And so it's like, he's got nothing tying him to his humanity except for maybe Ryan.
Yeah.
And, if Ryan gets taken away by Butcher or the boys, Homelander has nothing tied to like humanity. So I think you're right. I think he's going to go off the rails from here on out.
Yeah, and that was his only weakness too. Everybody that was his weakness is killed now. And that was kind of the point that she was saying was like, you could have broken out, blah, blah, blah. This is your weakness. So we learned that his kryptonite is his neediness for love and stuff like that. And so now that the people who know that are dead, again, it's Superman got rid of all the kryptonite on Earth. And
Right.
what's going to stop him? Nothing.
Man, yeah, you're so right. That last shot with him going up the elevator, all covered in blood and smiling, like,
Oh, the cinematography, bro.
yeah, yeah. The shots in this episode are just fantastic. Like it
Yeah.
just sets up everything so. Even with like Frenchie, like like I was really looking when Colin is hiding under the bed and you can see the scars on the ankle.
Yeah.
and you could see that, and it kind of cuts to Frenchie kind of pulling the covers up over his ankle, and then when he finally shows him after he gets beaten up and Colin's taking care of him, you're like, man, these little shots. It's something that I appreciate in Indiana Jones, where it like cuts to something really quick, so you get the context of what he's reaching for, or oh, he's trying to reach for the steering wheel, the pedal, or something like that. It's like it gives you that, but in such an emotional way in this show too, not just for action, for like emotions. It's really well done.
And Colin had the appropriate response. I was a little worried that we might get the, well, if Frenchie's on our side, they're not going to, Colin's going to be like, oh no, but I love you. But no, Colin starts whooping his ass. And it's like, that's the right response, honestly. And honestly, he deserves it. So that's, again, the boys is just showing us like what would really happen in this terrible, terrible, crazy situation. It's all heightened, of course. But yeah, I don't think I don't think that relationship's ever going to be repaired realistically. And I think that's going to really push Frenchie closer to his addictions, is the fact that he hurt somebody that he actually had feelings for.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you could tell he was already feeling guilty about it. But the other cool thing was in like the whatever you call like the recap of what to expect for this episode. We also see that there's that Russian lady from his past that basically was using him as a terrorist, but she wasn't in this episode. So it's clearly saying like something's going to bring her back into the fold, or that part of Frenchie's past beyond just how it affects Colin. I think she's going to be back again. I think she was called like not Tiny Tina or something like that from the comics, but
Yeah. She was in episode 3 when he was, or one of the earlier episodes when he was high this season.
right. As a flashback, was it?
Yeah, well, when he was high and hallucinating.
Right.
He hallucinated her and she was like, when are you going to tell Colin? Type of thing like that. So I wasn't sure. I thought that was what it was for. Because like, oh, okay, this is the episode where he's going to tell Colin then.
Yeah.
Type of thing like
Did
that.
Frenchie ever take V? I'm trying to think if he did last season.
I don't think so.
Okay. Because think about it, we got Butcher seeing his late wife. We've got Hughie seeing his mom. We've got, and then it would have been Frenchie seeing, this other person from his past. So I was wondering if there was a connection there. But if he didn't, it's just, and also Kimiko, but her past is actually here in front of her now too.
Yeah, actually working on taking her down. I'll have to see. Squeak's read all the books, so I'll have to hit him up. And then I just watched Emergency Awesome. Charlie, you guys check him out. He was talking about how in the books every member of the boys took V eventually.
Oh,
So,
yeah, that's right.
I don't know if that'll
I do
happen
remember
here or
that
not.
point. Yeah. Huh. I don't know, but it's interesting. A lot of this is like coming full circle with everybody has to still deal with the initial trauma that we got when we first met them. And I think that's so interesting. It's like here we are, season 4, and these issues are still there, and it's still like making these characters go on these journeys and pushing them forward. I think that's just something the boys does well. Like there's always character development. There's always like a next stage that they have to get to, even if we've seen them become powerful or kill somebody or whatever. It's just, it's there, they're just doing such a good job with it.
I know. I every time I watch it too, I'm just like, man, this has been satisfying. And in comparison to some other shows that we're watching right now, where I feel like I'm so conflicted on this, and
Right.
this was good, but this was bad. Like in this show, it's just all good. Like there might be things I like less or more, but it's all good. You know, like I don't necessarily need to see a whole bunch of Hughie, but now I can't wait to see what Simon Pegg stuff going down.
Right.
But
What
yeah,
about
so
Annie? What about Annie for you? Because I feel like this was a pretty
I'm
big Annie episode.
yeah, and you know what? I'm okay. This was probably the best episode for her. The fact that she unleashed on Firecracker, which God, I was rooting for when she was, but like that's ammo against her. The president doesn't want to deal with her anymore. Like that was all well crafted, and so she's not like a highlight of the series for me, honestly. But yeah,
Yeah, it's weird. Now that she's on the boys, it feels like they're trying to do more with her character. And it makes sense in this episode. Like, why wouldn't she align with this? And yeah, I feel like she truly loses everything in this episode. So it was really, really a big one for her. You know, I think Erin Moriarty does a great job. I know there's been some issues online with her as well, but you know, I think this was such a big one for her, and a lot of yeah, she's kind of lost everything now. It seemed like she already had in the past getting out of the seven, but now it seems like her mom's mad at her. Her whole fan base or her supporters are gonna be like, how do we support this person who just like acted like an animal and beat up their opponent on stage? Like, we can't have our kids really look up to her. Plus, you know, like whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, I think that's gonna be there's a lot of hot button issues around that, or that's a
course,
hot
yeah.
button issue in itself.
and no
So,
matter what, it's a personal decision. It's not something that somebody should be blasting on TV. Like
Yeah.
Firecracker specifically. Like before that happened, I think it was Sage went to her like, "Hey, this is how you're gonna close your show." Like that was they knew they're gonna.
oh, that
bust
was
it.
the button.
I presume it was what closed the show. It was what got her
Yeah,
ass
yeah.
beat because it was that night when she announced it. So that was towards the end of the show because they were going to be there all day long. Yeah, and the reason when she left the boys, she had no money, no nothing else, but she did have principles and the high ground, and that's why and her reputation. And now, what the reason Sage picked Firecracker was not because she could make Jubilee firecrackers. It's because she's the kryptonite to Starlight, and I love that it's not an ability thing. It's just that she was politically the right one for it, and it's phenomenal writing. It's a really good character in Sage. Yeah, I'm hyped.
Yeah. Yep. These plans, they're Sister Sage is just too good. I don't know what they're gonna do with that character. She's ultimate. She's the ultimate puppeteer.
That's what I was telling Squeaks. I'm like, I'm so surprised they didn't think about how they don't have an evil genius. Like of all the tropes that they use for superheroes, that's they have the stretchy guy that we've seen all that stuff like that. I'd never thought about the trope of evil genius, which is such a day one villain move. It's like the show I didn't know it needed it, but it needed it. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Oh, last thing, I can't remember her name. I think it's Joan, maybe the CEO. The one that like nobody likes.
I want to say
Catches A-Train grabbing the V.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And
That
it
was a
sounds
big
like
moment.
she's on board with A-Train right now. She might be also turning against Homelander, which they've been building that up all season long. And the Deep obviously is such a sycophant for the Homelander that he's not going to turn. But she was against the Deep in the last couple episodes too. So it kind of makes sense that they're creating a new faction within the Seven themselves.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing that A-Train's still on the seven in a sense and still on board. It's amazing the Deep is, but you're saying it we're so right. Like the sycophant, he can't go against Homelander because he's so afraid of him. But it's cool to see A-Train taking this chance, and then he gets caught. Is her name Kathy? I'm gonna have to look it up, but
I don't know.
yeah, like that's just an interesting thing. And he's like, oh, your best comeback was to leave a deuce in the toilet.
Yeah.
But yeah, now that she's kind of on his side and we've already seen her try to quit this season, and then shred up her resignation letter, it's going to be interesting because he's got somebody on the inside.
Yeah. And then I don't think she survives the season really, but I do think she's going to be really important for bringing in the Gen V kids into this because we know that they're coming eventually. And
Yeah,
then
we even got a little clip to them on the TV when President Singer is going through. It's like, oh, the Godolkin Four have seemingly disappeared. I was like, dang, like that's how the news is portraying it. They just vanished. Yeah,
it was and then for what was I going to say? Now I think A-Train. The reason A-Train is such a unique character is he's it's like the Flash, right? Like the Flash isn't as good as Superman. Obviously, Superman can whoop his butt, but he's a little bit faster than Superman. And I think A-Train can just outrun Homelander to where he's not as easy to kill as, say, like the Deep, or something like that. Like that's why he tells the Deep to go to A-Train, not A-Train to the Deep, because A-Train ain't. He's just good enough. And I really like that about that character. Is like he can't beat Homelander, but he's pretty close. So I love that.
Yeah. And I love it too. It's like, it's just everything that he's been through that's making him turn against Homelander. It's not that he just slowly or instantly anyway woke up one day and was like, he's bad, I'm gonna go against him. It's like things have slowly been put in place. His brother getting paralyzed, like him seeing what the organization does, to seeing how crazy Homelander is by the beginning of the season, killing those people. Like, hey, these are my biggest fans. You're gonna be martyrs. And even though A-Train didn't take a swing, he's just like, I can't be a part of this anymore. And we see him turn away from, I'm this celebrity, I'm one of the greatest things on earth, to this just isn't right. I can't do this anymore. God, what is his name? Jesse Usher, man, the dude is killing it.
He is killing it. Yeah. I'm such a sucker for those movies, though. Like I said last time, the A-Train movie, I hopefully get more clips from that with him and Will Ferrell. That would be so good. It would be really smart marketing if they released that trailer. So, like a new movie coming up,
Oh my gosh. And The Boys does that. They do those little clips. Like even going into this season, the Deep did a commercial for Liquid Death. Yep. And where he's like promoting their new water, and it's like a legit commercial, but he's the Deep. It's like what Vought has Ted Lasso. Yeah,
Vought has social media accounts, so you can follow Vought, and Vought is advertising as if the Seven exist.
Totally. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's so fun. And I found the CEO's name. It's Ashley.
Ashley, I knew it was some average.
Totally. Yeah.
Someone asked to just talk to the manager.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. Hits it out of the park again, guys. Let us know what you guys thought. I'm going to go 4 out of 5 on this. 4.5 out of 5. What are you thinking on this episode?
Yeah, I'm going to go maybe pace. Oh, man, I love this show so much. I'm going to go for 0.5 out of 5 too.
There we go. All right.
Yeah, I was really on the fence.
We had to. Yeah, we had to. All right, guys. So we have House of the Dragons coming up next. It comes out every Sunday. I just rewatched that again last night because, that's who I am.
Deep researcher here.
So make sure you guys hang out with us, and we'll see you guys then. Bye.
Aloha.